Before you make your first few $1 million online, there's this paradigm or distortion of reality that every new business owner or entrepreneur has, and it's the size of the market. Meaning they always come in thinking the market is much smaller than it is. I still remember the very first agency that I created. I was getting into real estate marketing. I had a sales consulting kind of coaching thing at the time. And I had a client who was in real estate marketing. I didn't even want to tell him that I was getting into real estate marketing because I didn't want him to think that I was trying to compete with him and that I was going to take the market share, etc. In reality, there were 2 million real estate agents. If I just worked with 0.001% of the market, I would have a 7-figure company. And for some reason, I was so worried about the saturation of the niche. I was so worried about letting other people know what I was doing. I thought the market was much smaller than it was. And because of that, I didn't specify down in that large real estate market who I wanted to work with, who I should have worked with. And because of that, I was speaking to the masses. It's very hard to sell. It's very hard to write content. It's very hard to write anything in marketing material when you're selling to the masses. And this is a problem that most new business owners struggle with. And it's one of the reasons they struggle to create anything, whether it's creating copy, outbound messages, emails, scripts, offers, you name it. It's very hard to speak to the masses. And so today, what I want to go over is a law that I kind of coined, if you will, called the law of specificity. Side note, this will probably be in the middle of the program, but this is the first video that I'm recording on paper, meaning I'm normally on the iPad. If I was on an iPad, I'd be centering this. This is driving me insane, but we're gonna roll with it. The law of specificity is the easiest way that I have found to visualize how we need to look at the market and our product or service or offering, and whether or not we are too specific, too general, or we're hitting the sweet spots of specific to general. So in short, it works like this. You have a box with 4 corners. In these 4 corners, you have your product, and then you have your market. And in both, you have general and you have specific. And the easiest way to understand this table is that you cannot be on the same row. Meaning you cannot be specific to specific and you cannot be general to general. Because if you're general to general, if you're specific to specific, that is how offers break. That is how you spin your gears. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of each and how you can recognize if that's where you are. But what you need to do and where you want to be is crossing from one row to another. Meaning we want to be general to specific or specific to general. Our product can be a general product if it applies to a specific group of people, or a product can be a specific product if it applies to a general group of people. And this creates a large enough, what we call TAM, which is an acronym for total addressable, did I spell this right? Market. This is now possibly embarrassing because I normally have, I'm pretty sure this is, yeah, I knew it. There's 2 D's in addressable. The total addressable market is the size of the market that you can potentially sell to. So example given, in real estate, the total addressable market of real estate is around 2 million real estate agents. If you were to specify down to real estate agents who only list homes, they do not represent buyers, you are specifying your market and your total addressable market is decreasing, meaning the size of real estate agents, meaning the size of market or the amount of real estate agents that you can sell to is now less. For any market to be relatively viable, I would say you need a TAM of at least 30,000. 30,000 is the least that we can get away with. And for content, to be honest with you, it's actually a little bit tight at 30,000. But I've seen companies do very well with the TAM of 30,000. To be honest with you, my industry is just above 30,000. 30,000 is a viable market. Anything less than that, you really have to be looking at large ticket prices. It gets a little bit hard to do any kind of content or ads or outbound. And I'm not going to, of course, be talking about ads too much in this program. This is not the kind of business model that I want to be creating. But any TAM of 30,000 plus, for really any model is healthy. I think if I was watching this video, the question I'd be now asking, what does a general product look like or a specific product? Same with the market. And I actually think it's easier to answer that question by showing you how you can use this table to alter your program. So let's use, for example, given the example of, we'll go through a B2C and then a B2B. Let's use a fitness coach. Let's say a fitness coach is selling a general product. They are selling weight loss, which for some reason, a lot of the coaches that come through this are fitness coaches. Let's say you are selling weight loss. Weight loss is a very general product. I'm sure you understand that everyone in fitness sells some form of weight loss. There's nothing specific about that. If you try to sell weight loss, which is a general product to everyone under the sun, 30-year-old men, 50-year-old women, stay-at-home moms to business owners who are men who travel around the world. If you try to sell weight loss to the general market, you're gonna get slaughtered because it doesn't feel specific. I think one core principle to come back to is the reason the law of specificity works is consumers, people, want to work with specialists. There's a common example or story for this. Imagine that you had a headache, you are struggling with migraines, your vision's blurring, you go to the doctor and you find out that you have a brain tumor. Knowing you have to get an operation, you're offered 2 surgeons to do the job. Surgeon number 1 is a general surgeon. He works with everything from trauma, GI tract, ortho, etc. He works all around the body. The second surgeon you're offered is a neurosurgeon. He spends all of his days, all of his life focusing on the brain and surgery around the brain. Which one do you think you would want to have operate on your brain? To the same way that you'd rather work with a neurosurgeon because they're a specialist. When consumers, business owners, whoever it is, are looking for any kind of coaching solution or done-for-you offer, they're going to be looking for someone who is a specialist at what they do. And the way that you can come off as a specialist is either based on the product or based on the market. So coming back, if you're a fitness coach and you sell some kind of weight loss program and you sell it to everyone, you are now the general surgeon. There's nothing that makes you specific. The next thing that people try to do, and if you're a fitness coach, you're probably already doing some kind of form of this if you're in here, is they say weight loss for X market. Often see high performing corporate men, which is a terrible way to specify down. But this is the attempt that most fitness coaches are taught to have some kind of general product or a specific market. And I think in the fitness niche, this is a little broken. We'll get into that in a second. But the problem with this example is that even though you're saying high performing corporate men, and you can add over 30 or whatever be it, your specific example is actually still very general. There's a massive market of high-performing corporate men. More than that, almost every single person in corporate America / around the world would consider themselves high-performing. So you're selling something that's general to general, and so it's still gonna be very hard for people to assume or think that you're a specialist. We're gonna get into in a second how to actually alter this, but let's go to just a quick business example, B2B. And we're gonna actually use the opposite example just so we can, when we alter, go through both scenarios. Let's say for this case, we're gonna actually do a done-for-you product. So let's say that we are selling Facebook ads. I'll use my business. Real estate agents. I actually should have made this red because I would have assumed that was specific at the time. This looks like you're doing something specific toward a specific-ish group of people. The problem with this is it actually still is too general to general. Facebook ads is a very general product at this point in time, right? In 2025, you can't get away with just running Facebook ads as a general service. Anyone can do it. Everyone's offering it. And real estate agents is pretty much its own kind of market in its own. It's so large that you can't just sell to real estate agents because there are so many different types of real estate agents, you have to specify further. But the goal of the chart is I want you to actually try to aim to be specific to specific, even though it's hard to make money at specific to specific. The reason I want you to be on this bottom row is that most entrepreneurs can't even fathom how specific they have to be in order to hit non-viability, meaning the TAM would not be at 30,000 plus. Most entrepreneurs, when they try to specify down, are still too general. And so I want you to aim to be as specific as you can in both, and through doing it, you're probably gonna end up being on a cross pattern on one of them. So example given, let's go to weight loss, and instead of creating offers, let's look at offers that have done very well, or in play, we'll do both. Let's go back to the example of fitness before we do B2B, and talk about how we can make it more specific to specific. So example given would be that instead of selling, we'll start with market, instead of using high performing corporate men, what I would do is I would think about all the exacts of what I want my market to look like. And as often as possible, I want to use objective terminology, not subjective. Meaning, instead of high-performing corporate men, let's say men that make $250,000 per year plus, men that travel for at least 7 days a month, men that are 30-year-old plus and that are fathers. And this is just, and these are just examples, but what we're doing is making objective claims that drive our total addressable market down. And these objective statements are filters that refine for your ICP, and your ICP should be very easy to spot based on who you're working with already. If you have any kind of success, you should be able to look at your client roster and say, I do really well with moms that are divorced at 40 years old that live in tropical areas and can work outside. That's a rough example, but I'm specifying my market down. And the reason this is so important is now when I'm speaking when I'm creating content, when I'm writing copy, I'm speaking to a specific type of person. Rather than trying to speak to everybody, I'm speaking to someone specific, and I can actually think about what that specific person, that 40-year-old divorced mom who lives in St. Pete, Florida, I can now think about what they would be doing on their weekends or their nights out and such, where they would be getting coffee, going on walks, etc. I can now use that when I'm creating copy or creating content. I can think about the desires that they would likely have. Same with men who are traveling 7 days a week, making good money, but they're fathers, they don't have a lot of time. I can now think about the constraints that they would have, and I can speak to that very well. So that's how I specify my market, but the way I can specify product is by mechanisms. Meaning, instead of weight loss, I can now just add how I do that. And so I'm just going to use rough examples, but it could be number one, the kind of diet that you have to subscribe to. Realistically, I'm now making my product more specific when I say that it is using a ketogenic diet than a normal eat whatever you want and cut out calories kind of diet, right? Because people who are not interested, it's almost like it's also specifying non-market, people who are not interested in using the ketogenic diet or don't have the belief behind that diet are not going to look at that product and they're going to push it out. Think about it this way. You know your offer is getting more specific, your market or your product is getting more specific when people are looking at it and saying, that is not for me. It's not that they're saying, oh, this guy's not a specialist. It's that they're saying this is not for me. The type of exercise regimen, he uses German volume training to help with weight loss. 10 by 10s on compound movements. That's not for me. I want to use a hypertrophic kind of movement. You can specify your product down, specify your market down, and before you know it, you're going to get to a group of people. It might still be in fitness, 500,000, a million, 2 million, whatever it is. Fitness is a massive market, but you're going to get to a much more specific type of messaging that feels like it's made for me if I'm reading it, right? So if I'm the guy who you've refined the filters for, and I've been looking for a ketogenic German volume training kind of program, someone to help me with that. Now when you're speaking to my filters, things that I objectively hit, and your product is something that I have been looking for, it's specified down in a way that I've been looking for, it shares the beliefs that I have, now it feels like it's made for me. Now you're a specialist, you're not a generalist. And the reason that you can go specific to specific is because I guarantee you, in trying to do that, you're still going to leave one of these general. And so one of them, you might get specific enough, and one of them will still be general. Or you might even still be on general to general, but one of them's teeter-tottering on going to specific. I just never see entrepreneurs go too specific on both. It's very rare. And so it's actually something you can aim for. In business, and then I'm going to tell you how you can actually recognize whether you are too specific and specific or general. Facebook ads to real estate agents. How do we specify down real estate agents? Well, we could say real estate agents who work only on transaction fees. So if you don't know, real estate agents normally work on what's called a commission split. And so they, on every deal, pay their brokerage 40%, 20%, etc. And then there are more boutique brokerages for agents that are more experienced normally that work on transaction fees, meaning every single time you sell a house, it's $595 toward the brokerage or $95, whatever be it. And sometimes it's monthly dues plus transaction fees, etc. But agents who work with transaction fees with their brokerage. It could be agents that work with an AOV or AHV, average home value, of $400,000 plus, and so on, right? So you have to be a agent who works with a boutique brokerage. And so you could filter down real estate agents to real estate agents who are with a boutique brokerage that work on transaction fees with an average house value or home value of $400,000 plus when it comes to their neighborhood, the clients they work with, etc. You could even get into the amount of hours a week that they work, because a lot of real estate agents only do it part-time. So you're specifying down these objective statements that people, they're not subjective. I think the main thing to note here is that a subjective statement like high-performing corporate men or professional real estate agents, I think people, number one, can see through that. But number two is that it doesn't feel like a direct claim to them. Versus when you make these claims that are like absolute yeses in my mind, like, yes, I am part of a boutique brokerage. Yes, I only work with transaction fees. Yes, my average house value for every home that I work with has been around $480,000. Yeah, I work 60 hours a week or 50 hours a week, whatever be it. Now I'm saying yes, 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 yes. I'm starting to say like, this is for me. He is speaking to me. Versus if you were creating content for coaches, example given. If you said, are you a high performing coach? I could say yes to that. I could say no to that because maybe subjectively I'm thinking that high performing coaches are making $4 million a month or $3 million a month. You know, I'm comparing myself now to guys that are way beyond me and they're high performing. I might not be high performing in my mind versus someone who's making $5,000 a month might think they are high performing. And so it's a subjective statement, which just, it never makes someone feel qualified or not qualified based on the filtration you're using. You want to use objective statements, and that is how you specify down real estate agents. And then instead of Facebook ads, something we can do to make that product more specific is Facebook ads for listings above $500,000, or we'll just use the AHV, $400,000 plus. So instead of running ads for buyers and such, we run ads for listings that you have that are only for $400,000 plus homes. And this is a rough example. It could be example given that you add to the service, so it's Facebook ads plus a ISA and appointment setting system, etc. Something that makes the product more specific than just Facebook ads, something that not everyone is offering. And then as you go specific to specific, realistically what you'll find is one of them will end up as still in general. And it's the same thing we talked about before. You're just going to have a much better time selling to the market. You're going to know who you're speaking to. You can think about now and write to agents that are only in boutique brokerages. And you can talk about now why boutique brokerages or agents with boutique brokerages need services like yours compared to big box brokerages like Keller Williams or EXP, etc., where maybe some of the stuff that you do is already included with the brokerage. So you can speak more to it, right? Now, here's the last part to this is how you know whether or not you're general to general or specific to specific. We'll start with how you know if you're here, because you'll never really be here. We'll call this row 2 for terms, and we'll call this row 1. So we can tell if you're in row 2 for both, if your offer is selling at a high close rate, but you just can't get any kind of throughput. Meaning you're creating content, but it's not getting viewership. You're running ads and you're just not getting a lot of impressions, but the CTR, the retention, the efficiency of the funnel or the content is incredibly high. People are hopping on sales calls and saying, this is exactly for me. Your offer is selling at a very high close rates. You can even justify high price tags and no one's complaining because you're such a specialist that they feel like it's for them, but you're just not getting in front of enough people. You've hit this point where you actually feel like you know everyone in that market. This is different to say than you're getting referrals, your content just sucks and so you're not getting views. This is like, hey, I feel like I know all of the people inside of this market and everyone knows about me. I've capped it out. That at that point might be too specific to specific. Your TAM is so small that you are living in too small of a box to actually expand. And so you would start to, at that point, generalize either your product or market based on, at that point, you would want to talk to me, to be honest with you. But realistically, even if you were here, you'd still probably be doing, unless it's a very small market that you're working with, you're still probably going to be at 7 figures easily a year. Row 1 is much more common. This is where almost everyone feels. And the way you can tell that you're in row 1 is you get high impressions, but you get low retention, meaning or efficiency or CTR, meaning if you're creating content, you're getting a lot of people to view the content, your content's getting a lot of impressions on YouTube, you're getting it in front of a lot of people on the homepage, but no one's actually clicking on it, no one's going through the funnel, no one's messaging you, no one actually is taking further steps because they saw it, but they didn't feel any kind of need to actually work further with you because you're a generalist. You also know you're here if you feel like you don't know what to create. So I am a coach for fitness and I just don't know new types of content to create. I don't know who I'm talking to. I can't speak to the problems that these people have other than your general, pinch my belly, fat, look in the mirror, don't like what I see, want to lose weight, put on the bikini body. Unless you have more nuanced, more niche pains, and unless you really understand the kind of person that you're actually talking to, you're gonna have trouble writing content, creating content, writing copy, whatever it is, you're gonna have trouble making things. You might even have trouble just making your offer at this point for people so that it actually feels like a specialist working with them. So often entrepreneurs will say, I don't know how to ideate content. Even myself, I'll run into content roadblocks and I just recognize it's because I'm trying to talk to too many people. I need to dial it back down and just realize all I'm trying to do when I specify down, and I'm thinking market specifically here, is I'm trying to specify down to where I'm really talking to one person, that one person just exists 30, 40, 50, 100,000 times. Meaning, example given, when I create content for Christian business owners, which is more of a general market, I specify it down by talking about coaches and talking about, I'm talking to friends on camera that I know that are Christian business owners that are coaches, and I'm talking to camera thinking that I'm talking to those guys. And now when I'm creating copy, I'm really creating copy based on that person or those 2 or 3 people that I'm thinking of, and that helps me specify it down. So sometimes what you have to do just to specify down market is like say, hey, out of my roster of clients, even if I don't have a lot, what commonalities are there? That is now the filter. And I'm looking for, again, objective statements here. Like I don't want something subjective. I want to have an objective claim. And so how old are they? Where in the world do they live? What state do they live in? What kind of income do they make? What kind of job do they, what kind of education do they have? Example given, I had a friend who ran a chiropractic agency and it was, what school did you go to? Because in chiropractic, there are 2 main schools of thought, if you will, and different universities will teach one or the other. So they specified down to one school of thought and looked for schools that way. So they specified down to one school of thought, and then you had to go to universities that taught that school of thought to work with them. And again, that made the chiropractors that saw that feel like it was a company designed and built for them. So what I'm trying to say is you want to specify down so much so that it gives you clarity on how to create stuff. And you're never going to get to the point where you're at row 2. And if you do, applause to you. It's really easy to start to broaden out. It's very hard to specify down. at least it's very hard to learn the skill set of specifying them. And so if you're in row 1, you're gonna have a lot of throughput, but you're not gonna have any efficiency. A lot of the time you won't even get there because you're not gonna know what to write, what to create. You're gonna have a little bit of analysis paralysis. This is the law of specificity, trying to get specific to specific, knowing that we likely won't, and in doing so, we're gonna have some kind of crosslap where we'll be specific to general or general to specific. Hope this helps. Love you guys much. Until next time, happy hunting. Oh no. Well, my SD card died out on this one.